Welcome to the In My Opinion show with Ronald Barry Robinson and friends, seen on the internet 24 hours, 7 days a week. To view, please go to flinttalkradio.com and scroll down to the In My Opinion show to view your latest in internet television. The In My Opinion show is also seen on Flint, Michigan Comcast Cable Channel 17 every Saturday at 6 p.m. and every Wednesday at 8:30. The In My Opinion show is also seen on Detroit, Michigan Comcast Cable Channel 68 7 days a week. Consult your community calendar. If you would like to view our shows that are shown on Detroit Comcast Cable Channel 68, please email me so that I'll have your email address and you will be emailed the time and dates of those shows on 68. I would like to introduce my wonderful co-host, Ms. Denise Smith-Allen.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, Denise. And Mr. Henry Hatter.
Hi, Denise.
Welcome all to the In My Opinion show. Let's talk about voter ID laws. Voter ID laws passed in dozens of states claiming voter fraud. There is absolutely no evidence that it is occurring. Why are the Republicans trying to correct something that does not or never existed? You thought you were going to get away, didn't you, Mr. Hatter?
I love the subject.
A resident Republican. I'll tell you the plain truth about the voter ID law. This is a direct assault to disenfranchisement of blacks, Hispanic students, the elderly, poor whites, union members. This voter ID law shit is just another way the Republicans are attempting to wrestle the presidency away from the first black president, Barack Obama. Although historically, Obama is not the first black president of the United States. The first black president was John Hanson during the American Revolution and elected under the Articles of Confederation. Additionally, in early American history, if a person had one drop of black blood, they were considered a Negro. Those former presidents with black heritage were Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, Warren Harding, and Alexander Hamilton. There are others. Go to your internet and just type in black presidents. Don't take Ronald Barry Robinson's word for this. Do your research. In over 26 states, voter disenfranchisement is at risk. Don't let this happen. We have came too far to let the right return this nation back to a segregated past. Just in the In My Opinion show's message board. Voter disenfranchisement. This November we face an election of unprecedented importance. Because of this, more states have passed more laws blocking more voter access to the ballot box this year than any other year since the rise of Jim Crow. This blatant attempt to disenfranchise millions of Americans is meant to silence our community's voice and sway the result of the election. This strategy is simply voter suppression is the flip side of buying an election. First, they buy as many votes as they can. When that's not enough, they suppress the votes of those most likely to object to their fear-based agenda. At its core, we are fighting to preserve the values that make America great: justice, inclusion, and free and fair elections. This is a battle we must win. In order to win, we must do two things: defend our right to vote and expand the vote as much as possible. That's why I'm thrilled to announce the launch of This Is My Vote, a nonpartisan nationwide effort to fight back. This campaign will bring us together as we register and educate hundreds of thousands of voters this year. Mr. Republican?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henry Hatter? What is your opinion?
I am so glad. I couldn't wait for you to wait and let me respond to your accusation that we're undermining the voting process in the United States. Before 1965, blacks in some states had no voting rights at all. And due to the efforts of President Johnson, after Martin Luther King and others, advocated for the voting rights of African Americans, particularly in the Deep South. We had our first Voting Rights Act that justified why black Americans go to the poll today. Now, today, schemers are trying to undermine the integrity of the Voting Rights Act, because it is the Voting Act's right that was passed then that gave us the rights that we have today. And all of a sudden, we've got schemers out there and saying, oh, black people are easy to manipulate, so we'll just make it a case that they're against us because they want to show, we have to show registrations now. What is wrong with showing a registration? When I go in and pay my bills by Visa, they ask me for a driver's license. I don't see anything wrong with it. If I don't have no ill will or any intent to defraud the system or deny anybody a right of some kind, why should I care whether they ask for my ID when I go in to vote?
But see, that's not really the issue, I don't think, Henry. In my opinion, the issue is this. For months, we've seen the Republican candidates are all around the country, all right? Not one of those people that voted for them has had to show identification, all right? Why is it that come December 12th, November, the election in 2012 for the President of the United States, now all of a sudden, all right, the game has changed. We've got to show identification.
Ron, I have never gone into the poll when I didn't have to show my identification. That is a perpetual thing with me. Each time I go in, if I'm going to pick up a ballot, they said, where is your... And these are people that know me, but I have to show it each time.
But if you don't have ID, you can also what they call a provisional ballot, all right? Attesting to that, hey, look, I am who I am, and vote.
Well, no. There's been evidence of too much fraud that way. We should not try to undermine the integrity of the American political system.
Well, the Republican Party is exactly trying to undermine the integrity, of the vote. Okay?
It's not
because they don't want to see a black president for another 4 years.
They voted
That's
for
the bottom line. Maybe so.
And I have no problem with that. I have a lot of trust in the whites in this country electing black Obama.
Not all whites are bad, but there's a whole lot of them that are horrible.
And everybody is not against blacks, and a lot of people want to see them have their due in this country.
It's these politicians up in the state capitals and in Washington D.C. is creating this mess.
Ron, we should not be.
These right wing Republicans.
We should not even be having this discussion.
No, we shouldn't.
Just 40 years from now, African Americans will be a third of the voting bloc in this country.
They're trying to establish right now, all right, rules and so forth to take away any power that we may accumulate.
Well,
that's the name of the game.
Whatever affects the blacks in this case will also affect whites.
Okay.
And that's not likely to happen.
I have to ask a question. Henry, you alluded to the fact that in 1960 or 65, when the Voting Rights Act was presented and passed, that it became available so that blacks, particularly in the South, could vote. Now, my question is, why does it have to keep being reassessed?
Reauthorized?
Yes. Why is that?
No, that's a travesty. That is a travesty. Very un-American. Very, very un-American.
Japanese
If
don't
you
have
should
to.
argue any at all,
That's the argument.
That's the argument.
That's the
Not
argument.
because blacks should be empowered to vote as a basic right under the Constitution.
Period.
Period. But the argument is not ID. It's the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. You got it. You hit it right on the head.
And that's crazy, When foreigners come over here and they get nationalized, am I right? They don't have to go back every 10 10
5,
years.
10 years, 15
I can
You know what I
see,
mean?
now I can see why there's so much discussion and anger.
See?
But we're not
I'm
hitting the
livid.
right.
I'm livid, all right?
We need
Yeah,
to
but
hit
the
right issue.
argument has to be framed differently,
Yeah,
because
it
the
has to be
real
framed
issue,
different.
the real issue is not the voter ID law. It's what's inherently wrong with this whole idea that we have to be
Reauthorization.
re-upped, just like we have a driver's license. We have to, have that renewed.
The law-
Why do we have to have it renewed? Why can't it just be in place and permanently be a
Yeah.
part of the framework of the Constitution
I
and
agree.
everything?
Absolutely.
And it reminds me of the saying that the Lord giveth and He takes it away. Well,
Well, the
we
Lord
have
didn't have
rights
nothing
under
to
the
do with this.
Constitution. No, but it's absolute rights of government to give it and then decide to take it away. That's what's dangerous.
Just like the amendments, we can think about the amendment that they put on the books about prohibition, okay? And then they had to rescind it, okay? So this law, to me, could be just like that.
That's
They
what we're
could-
afraid
it's-
of.
You've got it. Now you've got some people who are in control down there in Congress, and if they get enough votes, they can make this an issue
Sure.
where we will be back basically to chattel slavery. Okay, if we are not careful. So if you're going to argue this voter right ID law, you need to take the thing in its entirety.
But in
Absolutely.
all cases, the integrity of the American political system should be preserved. Because we're the first ones to be denied. You need to preserve, and the Voting Rights Act is something that's very basic, fundamental to our own welfare and our own liberties.
All that is they want to hold this voter rights stuff over black folks' head, all right? So that whatever devilishment they can conjure up, all right, they're going to do it.
But I would say that the circumstances that applies there, as Denise has said, is the reauthorization of the act, not the voter ID, because everybody has to show an ID. And people can move from state to state, vote in one state and go into another state and vote. You've heard of those kind of
But-
scandals. We
Yeah,
don't want those.
that's so small. You know, it shouldn't even be
We
an
have
issue.
no evidence of how big it is.
Okay,
And
all
even
right.
just one case undermines the integrity of the American political system.
Well, I'll use your word. There's schemers out there.
Yeah, there are schemers out
All
there.
right, that are trying to disenfranchise us. As simple as that.
Well, manipulate.
You know what I mean? I'm not
Because
trying to blame.
we don't want anybody
the
to
race
touch
card,
those
but
rights that we have.
doggone it, that's just the way it is, and I'm so sick and tired of it. You know what I mean? Now these people, when you're going to see some, and I don't advocate violence, but you're going to see some social unrest here in America. All right, you are going to see it because people are fed up. Not just black folks, but poor whites, Hispanics, okay? Anybody that doesn't look white, all right? You're going to see, there's going to be a revolution, all right?
Whites are
And
also
again, I
part
don't
of the
advocate
link.
violence, but
Yeah.
but it's inevitable. That's
No.
just like Snyder, you know what I mean, and his little game that he was trying to play with Detroit, all right? A gentleman down there that I know, all right, Minister Malik Shabazz of the New Black Panther Party said, Snyder, if you send your people in here, all right, and take over Detroit, we're going to burn Detroit down.
And this is a
All right.
minister?
Yes, he is.
This
Yes,
is a
he
minister?
Yes, he is. And the thing about it,
I rest my case.
and the thing about it, I don't agree. Again, I don't agree with violence, but that's just an indication of people are fed up.
People are fed up, but we are a little bit more sophisticated than that. At least that's the belief that I have about folks at this point. Because here we have a situation, and I'll relate it back to something that happened over the internet, where a young woman who didn't like the fees that were going to be charged, and she decided she was going to get an online petition. And through her efforts, she was able to overturn a decision that was made by Morgan Chase and all the rest of those people. And so what we have to look at now is how we can use media for a good thing, technology for a good thing. And we're going to pull together, just like we've done with the Trayvon Martin situation, you know, whereas people are getting on board and they're, you know, talking about their disenchantment and their anger and whatnot, but they're taking it and using it in a viable way. Okay, destroying Detroit or destroying anything at this point where you live is not a good response.
I agree with that.
Okay, that's not a good response, and we shouldn't even entertain those kinds of discussions. I think at this point we have to help our folks to be a little bit more savvy in our approach.
And this is our country.
Economic empowerment and economic boycotts is what people who have this quote unquote elite, empowerment on them right now. That's what they speak to. That's what they deal with, and that's the only way you are going to affect some real change. Is hit them in the pocketbook.
Exactly.
So, advocating any type of civil disobedience, I'm not opposed to civil disobedience, don't get me wrong, but we shouldn't even be talking about, violence on that level.
Ron, only 30 states signed into law in September of last year. There were about 30 states that had signed into law the new regulations for voter ID. And some states don't have it. I guess you've got to have enough of a record there to know that you have some certainty about who that person is when it goes into the booth to vote. Now, our votes are it's individualized. They don't count much unless they are collectively applied to an issue or to a candidate. But how do you like it when someone comes in and has no right to be in the voting booth, cancel your vote out? And that's exactly what happens when you have voter fraud.
And that's the same thing that's happening with Snyder, with his emergency manager stuff. All right, coming in and taking the power, the political power, away from all of these different elected officials.
Yeah,
all
but
right?
Ron,
and they seem to be. And again, I'm gonna play the race card because that's exactly what it is. All right.
Okay, buddy.
These are black cities. Okay. According to published reports, there's over 80 other cities plus around the state that are in financial distress, white communities. I don't see his ass going into these communities and appointing an emergency manager. So far, it's just been black cities.
But
all right?
we
And have
control
to get
the
away from
largest
that.
population concentrations in the state. Those are blacks. Okay?
In Detroit.
And they have...
if they take away, if they disenfranchise them, there goes, for all practical purposes, there goes our future.
Yeah, but stop and think about it. Is it really? Or when the governor comes in and rescues a city that cannot make its government work, it is constantly in debt. It can't pay its bills. It can't deliver services to the people.
Okay.
And whose fault is that?
Okay,
That's Lansing's fault. Because right now, they owe Detroit over $200 million if they would get
That's
off their
exactly
ass.
about
If
it.
they,
Okay, but
if they
let
would
me
get
ask
off
you
their
this.
ass, okay, and give them Detroit that money, okay, there wouldn't be a need for a financial manager.
And I guess I really take exception to the idea that anybody is rescuing us. We're not being rescued, okay? Having an emergency manager put in place, that's a dictatorial role. And the way it has been put together now, it has given them broad power, sweeping power, because we had an emergency manager in here before. A few years ago we had one, but that was there to deal with the correcting of the books, fixing the problem. Now what you're doing is you have dangerously put people in place that now can dismantle unions, void contracts.
Whatever it takes
Whatever-
to correct the situation
But this-
and reestablish dominance for the city.
No, that's dominance of power that is dangerous. That's some dangerous power there that you're talking
But
about.
Denise, anytime that a city cannot care for its own, carry out its mandates, do the job that it's supposed to do, with respect to hiring, firing, and providing government services that people require. It can't. Anytime you can't do that, you have to have a higher authority that can do it.
I don't have a problem with that. But what I'm saying to you, compared to what we had before, emergency management, this one has sweeping power,
yeah.
sweeping authority, more than what's needed to get the job done.
But that's what you have to do.
More than, no.
See, that's what you call
disagree with
corporate
that.
authority.
This is what,
I
this is
disagree
what
with that.
U.S. Representative John Congress said about emergency financial managers. They take away a waiver of legal recourse, no financial assistance from the state, no compliance with open meeting acts, unfettered authority granted to the state, weakens collective bargaining, does not protect against EM appointments, all right, indefinite operation by unelected officials, okay? Our democracy dictates, it tells us that, you know what I mean? We learned this lesson when, back in the early days, okay? When we told England, you know what I mean, to go, you know, keep your ass across that ocean.
Take a hike.
All right?
Yeah.
Now, what this is, you know, what these emergency financial managers are doing, are we bringing that same foolishness, seems to be, that we got rid of, you know what I mean, years ago, back again.
But the people's interest is tantamount over all other interest. You gotta, that's how you have to look at it. It's the people's interest.
People are not interested in having an emergency manager.
But people want services delivered. They want it to be paid on time. If they deliver service for a state government or for other units associated with the city, they want it to be treated in a way that there's fairness and equity in the process. But if your city can't pay its bills, then the people suffer.
That's true, and therefore you get yourself some auditors in there. Okay.
They've already tried all of that.
Yeah. Well, but
We've been looking at these deficits for years, and all we
Absolutely.
do is just we promise, and then nothing comes of it. So there comes a time when you have to take an action, a drastic action.
And I think what Ron was talking about with Lansing having certain monies available that they need to go ahead and pay, they should be paying. Okay, because again, if you're looking at cities like Flint and like Detroit, not only do they not have the revenue, they don't have the numbers, the people that they once had in order to sustain them. So if you don't have people who can help you with as far as your tax base to help pay the bills, then you are going to continue to have a domino effect. But in the meantime, you still got monies in Lansing that were allocated to the cities for certain things that were not forthcoming.
But there are trade-offs on that.
And also, too,
You have lost population. You don't require all of the services that you had in the past, or pay the people that you've had in the past. So people who are leading the government must accept responsibility to restore the government to a functioning and operating system.
well, then Lansing ought to give Detroit that $200 million that they owe them, all right?
I
for
agree.
For revenue sharing, then there wouldn't be an issue, all right? Lansing, according to published reports, found $1 billion, all right? Which was all over the news. What are they doing with that?
Not billion.
Not $1 billion. $1 billion, okay? Now,
Where'd they find it?
yeah.
This stuff is not, can't be hidden. That,
And then also too, which people don't know, is that Lansing has borrowed money, according to published reports, from China to pay their bills.
yeah.
So
They
now,
have. They have.
so now,
But
what the hell is going
they
on?
restored the state to dominance too.
Okay,
The state cannot operate with an unbalanced budget, and nor can any city in Michigan or any school district. No public entity can operate with a deficit. And so
It's
if
not
Detroit
supposed to.
can't eliminate its deficit, somebody has to come in and eliminate the deficit for them. You can look at anarchy. These kind of things cause anarchy. They tear down systems. tear down organs of government. They completely mislead individuals and raise low confidence in government. So yes, I do think that we're headed in the right direction, thanks to the governor.
I would
would
disagree with that totally.
I agree with you.
He borrowed from China. Please.
Yeah, isn't it a damn shame?
But he got
to
the
pay
money
their
back.
bills, but yet they want to come in to other communities, all right, and try to dictate. They can't take care of their own house. I mean, that is upsetting.
But there are a lot of kids out there and a lot of parents out there that are happy for what the governor's done. He's helped to reestablish them, give them confidence that the city will survive.
I don't
But
know.
the way
If
it
you
was
got-
going, the way it was going before, the city was on its way out.
I would certainly
It had-
like to hear where you got your statistics from on that one, because I don't know any persons that I've spoke to in Flint
Let's see,
that
Detroit
are happy.
What's the deficit in Detroit? What's the deficit? It is 50 million.
150 million.
150 million.
150 million, something like that.
150 million is no small change.
Well, 250 million if the people up in Lansing would pay their bills, all right, to Detroit. We
You
wouldn't have
can't
this problem.
survive with a debt like that.
This
Not
has
even on
been
yours.
this has been a great conversation. We will revisit this again, but first I want to thank our wonderful technical crew. They call them IT, Information Technology. Okay, Mr. Neesmith Allen and Mr. Henry Hatter.
Thank you.
This is Ronald Berry Robinson and friends saying until next time, stay focused.